Hey, folks, and welcome to another episode of Yes and Ask Me, a show based out of San Antonio, Texas, where I get to interview some of the most senior level players here in the community and pick their brains and find out what makes them tick and understand their interesting perspectives. Today's show is going to be how improv has affected your life. And this is one of those shows where I normally don't want to get too personal with my panelists, but today's show, I want to know all about them and what improv has, how it's affected their lives. I'm going to go ahead and bring out my cast. Tina Jackson, would you please join us?
Always.
Tina, my middle square, thank you for joining us.
Hey, I'm always happy to share way too much information about myself to the general public.
Well, then today's a perfect opportunity for you.
Been waiting for it my whole life.
So later on in the show, we're gonna do a little deep dive into your background in improv. I know that we always introduce you, but let me just say that you have been doing improv for about 20 years now, and you started in high school?
Yep, I was a sophomore in high school the first time I took an improv class.
Okay. We're gonna get back to that, believe me.
Oh, I know you're gonna go for it.
My next guest is Crystal Jackson. Crystal, would you please join us on the show?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Crystal, thank you for joining us.
I'm so happy to see you.
Good to be here.
Crystal, can you give us a little bit of background? How long have you been doing improv?
I've been doing improv since the beginning of 2017. Started taking a class at Comedy Sports with Austin. Went to ACI, went to Bexar Stage, and I just
hit
as much as I can.
San Antonio trifecta, I guess.
Yep.
One of the few who hit all three.
So for all of our viewers, I know Crystal through Bexar Stage. Crystal and I have performed together. We're in a group together right now. And we're part of this community. And before quarantine, we would see each other every single weekend.
Yep.
All right, Crystal, I'm going to get back to you in a bit. But next, I want to introduce Steve Circeo. Steve, would you join us, please?
Hey.
Hey, Steve. How you doing, man?
I'm doing really well. How are you doing, Rick?
I'm doing good, Steve. Thank you for joining us. Could you give us a background on how long you've been doing improv?
Well, Chris and I were in the same 101 class at ACI, and then also in the same level 1 class at Bexar Stage. I did not do any comedy sports because I'm biased against short form.
One of those.
Let's just get that out of the way.
Just get that out of the way right now. At least we all know.
If I thought I had to do whose line is it anyway stuff, I would not be here right now.
I believe you entirely.
And these are all perfectly valid opinions for all of our viewers. If you want to become more familiar with short form, long form, that sort of thing, we did a previous episode. You can find it on YouTube's Bexar Stage site. For now, though, I want to go back to you, Tina. The topic of this show is how improv has affected your life, how it's impacted you. Now, I'm trying to imagine 15, 16-year-old Tina in high school.
Good luck. She looks exactly the same, but she's real different.
So we all come to improv at a different time in our lives. You, as a high school student, why did you decide to join improv as opposed to any of the other extracurriculars that you could have done in high school?
Well, I've always loved theater. My mom loves theater, and so my brother and I used to go to shows, plays, mostly since I was little. So I always wanted to be on stage. I was always like singing along to the TV or MTV when I was a kid. And I was always kind of a performer. So the extrovert in me has always wanted to be on stage and be seen. But I got to high school, and my high school had an amazing theater program. But as a freshman or a sophomore, it was pretty rare to get cast in one of the shows. So at the end of my freshman year, I auditioned for a more advanced class that did improv the first semester of my sophomore year. So I auditioned into a class and I was like, ooh, finally a chance to get on stage and do something. I had no experience with improv. I'd seen Whose Line Is It Anyway? And obviously I liked it. But Ignacio just called me out for blasting Avril Lavigne, but that was true. And that's mean that you know that. But it's true. And so I auditioned into this class and I made it. Full disclosure, everybody made it. But I took my very first improv class my first semester, my sophomore year in high school. So yeah, 15.
Okay. I'm going to be coming back to that in a little bit, but I want to get everybody else's background. Crystal, no need to give ages here for the ladies or the gentlemen, but how would you describe the phase of your life that you were in 3 years ago when you started to take improv? Early in your career, in the middle of your career, how would you describe it?
I was in the Air Force.
Okay.
I was doing top secret work, intel, and but I was in the middle of a breakdown in my life. Severe depression hit me, like blindsided me. I didn't know what to do,
Yeah.
And then a friend of mine, his name was Donnell Brown, said that he's also in the military. He told me that the best support system that he's ever encountered was in the improv community, like even better than the military, better than the Air Force. So I said, oh, I guess I'll try it. I watched him enough times on stage, so I went and I tried it. And I mean, it's really the only thing that gets me out of my depression. I can get really down on myself. So this thing, brings me up. So much thanks to the community for that, though, the people. And
Yeah, I think the community is a huge part of that. I want to get to everybody's background, but the community, I think it's a huge part of that because I feel that too.
No, I love hearing that, and as a part of the San Antonio improv community, I know exactly what you're talking about, and we're going to come back to you in a little bit, Crystal. Steve, you've been doing improv for about 3.5 years now.
Sure.
What phase of your life were you in when you got introduced to taking improv classes?
Well, I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't looking for anything. I've always been pretty even demeanored. But I thought I'd try it just to meet actors because I was a filmmaker and I didn't know how to meet actors because I'm not good at meeting people. I don't, if you know me, I don't really like people. But anyway, I don't know if Crystal remembers, but I remember the very first class that we were in together, which was my first class and her first long form class. I found out we had to do a show at the end of the class, and I was like, oh. The whole time I was just like, oh, geez.
You were very vocal. You told everyone in the class, including our instructor, that you were not going to be in that show.
I can picture that so clearly.
There was no way. And I was probably even like my lip quivering because that's a failure, right? And I'm not a failure.
No, you were very, there was no emotion on your face. It was just very, what do you call it? Straight-laced?
Matter-of-factly, just stating that.
I can very clearly remember that, Steve. Very early in your improv where you used to sit in the front row at ACI at one of the tables with your arms crossed, frowning at us on stage.
Oh, there were no smiles.
There were no smiles. I thought for sure, I was like, this has got to be somebody's like family member because there's no way that this guy comes to see that many shows and is that unhappy about it.
I was really enamored of the long form. I thought this is really clever and it looks like fun, but not something I could do. So, but we'll get into that, what it means to me as we progress, I guess.
Sure.
So anyway, where I was in my life was just, and where it ended up being was I'm always looking for something new to do. So I'd done the filmmaking thing for a while. And then it was like, okay, this is something I can dive into. So I dove into it.
Well, and it's got a lot of, there's a lot of good overlap. There's a lot of, especially when you're doing small budget or guerrilla kind of filmmaking, is like there's a lot of thinking on your feet anyway. So it's a useful skill for filmmakers for sure. Yep. I know that's one thing. Andrew Hempfling, who was on the podcast last week, got into improv for reasons, but one of them was that he enjoyed what it did for his filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's something that you are not alone in the seeking something new that's peripherally similar to something that you already enjoy.
And in it, really, I discovered a community. You know, we already talked about the community a little bit, but I mean, that was there. It's like I was a Russian linguist in the Air Force, and that was a community that I still value, and I still see those people every so often. But then for a long period of time, I was a training manager in aircraft maintenance, and there was nobody there that I could really relate to.
Huh.
So when I found the improv community and the acting community, I was like, oh, okay, this is good. These are my people. This is cool.
You don't like people, but if you're gonna like people, they're
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, it's all shibby.
It is shitty. I agree with you, Steve. I think that's
We had
excellent.
such an extensive pre-show conversation about the word shibby.
And Steve, I'm going to get back to you on that in a little bit too, but I want to return to Crystal. So, Crystal, you have to help me to understand this because when I think about improv, I've taken improv classes, I've performed up on stage. Some people describe being up in front of people as one of the most terrifying things that they can possibly imagine. And here you are telling me that this is something that actually helped you when you were in depression. How is that? How is it that you can be feeling so bad, but yet go up on stage and do something absolutely terrifying and feel better because of it?
There are so many people that can testify to this. Tina can definitely testify. I can be in like the worst mood. Like it seems like I'm going to give the worst show talking to her backstage, but then I get on the stage and it's a completely different thing.
She lights up on stage. It's absolutely incredible. And sometimes the transformation is like 0 to 60. Like sometimes I'm worried whether she's going to get on stage, and she psychs herself up and she can make herself do it. And then she gets on stage and she can't take your eyes off her because she's so engaging to watch and like a fully separated person.
There's just such freedom on stage.
I've never watched a transformation like that, like just so immediate from off stage, like psyching yourself out, to going on stage and just being like enormous on stage and just taking up like space and vocal, you don't hug the back line and you don't let other people do the show for you. You're really like such an active participant in your shows. I love it. It's amazing.
I started off, as we said before, doing shows with Steve. We had a group together, Savage Mistress.
Still the best name for any team.
It's a great name. Honestly, it's a great name.
Let's just start it over again. It doesn't have to be the same members. It can be the same members. Just don't lose that name. Okay.
Gina back. Where's Gina? LA. She's in LA.
So Crystal, what happens to you up on stage when you have that transformation? What does it feel like?
On stage, I don't have to think about anything. I know that's counter. That's counter to what we're taught. Because you have to. I mean, what am I trying to say? On stage, I'm not under any restrictions. That's what I feel. I'm just reacting to whatever's happening. I'm just helping out whoever's on stage with me and playing up there. Like if I'm in a class, oh man, I go down the tube so fast. 15 minutes and I'm just struggling to make it to an hour. In a class, on stage, I can do anything.
So Crystal, would you say, I almost want to use the expression tunnel vision or blinders. Would you say that when you're on stage, you're only focusing on that moment and your scene partner and the scene and not about all of the other stuff in your life?
Yes, none of that stuff is even on the stage with me. People's expectations, that's the thing I struggle with most in my life, my daily life. It affects everything. But on stage, I'm not thinking about your expectations. I'm sorry. I'm not thinking about the crowd.
Don't ever apologize. That's so cool.
Yeah.
If they laugh at a joke, I'm like, ooh, cool. But I'm still like, I'm not, nope. It's about being free in the moment. And that's the only way I can do improv. I mean, as much as it'd be nice to be able to pre-planning, you can tell, I just go down the spiral. It's not good.
I can vouch for that too. It's people talk about it being terrifying and they're like, I can't imagine. And I'm the opposite. I can't imagine going with a script and to try and memorize and get, especially when you have one of those writers that needs to get everything exactly right, you know, or a director. I was able to act in a film that hasn't been released yet, a short film. And I was able to do that, but I was also able to improvise some of the lines instead of having to stick strictly with the lines, because I don't think I could do it that way. So that would be terrifying to me, to have to do that, the lines exactly right. But when you're just out there and the story is there, or the scene is there, and you're just kind of filling it as it comes along, that's just a great feeling for me. And especially when you discover things that you're like, oh, okay, that's really cool. Because you're not coming up with that, and your partner, scene partner, everything's happening together, and it's just being revealed through you, you know. And I love that about improv.
Oh yeah, that was a great way to say it too. That you're uncovering it together.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that really, you know, I took up improv as a hobby that was close to acting because I wanted to act. But I was pretty garbage at memorizing lines, but I could emote just fine. I could be a good actor, but not if I was trying really hard to remember all the lines. I was really disconnected between my head and my heart. And I had a lot of trouble doing both at the same time. So I could either get the lines right and be a robot, or I could get the feel of the scene right and forget to cue my scene partner with the proper line that would, you know, keep the scene going or whatever. And so improv was a really happy medium for me, where I could write the lines myself in the moment and still be able to give a full emotion. So improv for me was my vehicle for acting. And I think improv has really helped my acting. I don't act much anymore because improv has really obviously become my life. But when I do act, I don't find it as hard to emote and memorize lines as much as possible. And frankly, most of the people who hire me as an actor like acknowledge that I'm going to improvise a majority of my lines, frankly. But I do think it's really helped. I think some of the things you were talking about was like confidence, community, escapism are some of the aspects that we've already previously mentioned, or overcoming. Maybe we haven't talked about this one too much, but like, because I've done improv for 20 years, I started when I was 15. Every single significant thing that's ever happened in my life, I've also had improv in my life at the same time. And so I very clearly can remember falling in love and what my improv was like when I was falling in love for the first time, and what improv was like when I had my first real heartbreak, and what happens when I'm going through a deep depression and some horrible things are happening in my life, using it as escapism and forgetting about the acting part of it that got me into it in the first place. Is like improv has been a vehicle throughout my entire life to handle things. It's very therapeutic without being specifically therapy. I will never tell you it's in place of therapy, but it's very therapeutic to be able to utilize some of the emotions you feel in real life and put them on stage, or have a conversation with somebody you weren't able to have in person, but you're having it with a scene partner, and it's not really going the exact same way, but you're able to get some of the same emotionality or satisfaction out of it because you have used your emotion for something that pushes you in a different direction or whatever.
Yeah, it's interesting to talk about emotions, and it's interesting to me that, when I was describing how I was saying I wouldn't be in the show, and I was like, and I'm sure my lip was quivering, and Chris was like, no, you were stone-faced. But how I felt inside was like, I was on the verge of crying, And so I think that improv has helped me at least get a little bit more in touch with that, and to be able to emote. I'll never be the Mr. Emotional, but it certainly has helped me get in touch and to open up. That's the big thing, is it's helped me to open up to possibilities. And, I discovered my my current life partner and romantic partner through improv, and generally
through that very same level 1 class, baby.
Yeah, and it's a little messy because I was married at the time when I was falling in love, but previously I would never allow myself even to look outside and to even be open to that. And this is going to come off as negative to a lot of people, and I apologize for that. But to me, it was a positive thing, because there's sometimes things need to end, but you just don't know how to end them. And that's still messy, and I did it all wrong and everything. But ultimately, things worked out for the best. So things, just being open to life and the possibilities is one of the things that improv really did for me. Huge.
Steve,
I think that
go on.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think that comes a lot from like the very most basic lesson of improv being yes and, right? The idea of being accepting of the situation that you're in and the ability to add to it. So I mean, I think foundationally improv creates that kind of atmosphere and creates some of those open friendships and relationships and that kind of thing, because we're all operating in the same similar mindset of, yes, this is where I am, and what's next, and what's coming next, and how do I add to it? And so I find for me that that improvisers, I think the reason categorically that improvisers in general are such a good supportive community for each other is that basic, the two most basic principles of improv being yes and got your back.
Yeah.
And so coming from the habitual forming of those patterns on stage, I think it lends itself within that same community. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about improv is the community aspect to it. Coming from those two most basic foundational like pieces.
No, I absolutely love this. So, Tina, earlier you were talking about the escapism that improv allows you, but that's on the stage. But here we're talking about the actual skills, the yes and life skills that improv gives you. And Steve, it sounded an awful lot like improv kind of helped you to like move to a new phase of your life.
Yeah, it really did. I don't want to get too much into it, because as I said, I think there's negative aspects because I didn't handle things properly. But ultimately, getting from one phase to the next phase never would have happened without my participating in improv and just being part, not only because I met Falke through improv, but because just the basic mindset that you gain with, moving forward instead of just being, I don't know, being satisfied or not even, anyway, probably getting a little too deep, but being able to be open to the possibilities.
Well, and I think everything you said there was really beautiful. And even though your transition might have had a sloppy edit, let's just call it a sloppy edit. Yeah. You moved into a new scene that you're really happy in, your mono scene. You'll just stay in that one for a good long time for sure, because that's I have already seen not just your relationship with Falke, but over the last 3 years knowing you has been like such an evolution of Steve. I mean, I have seen I mean
it makes me happy, just everything that it's been done for him through improv.
I know. It's been really neat to watch you really sink your teeth into this, not just the art of it, but the personality and the openness of it that you have mentioned. I remember one time very early on having a conversation with Steve about something. He was like, I don't really like that team or that show that much. I don't like musical improv. And then I remember Crystal, he went to Savage Mistress, went to that improv festival in Oklahoma City. And you took a musical improv workshop. Is that right, Steve?
Yeah.
At that time?
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute. Steve told me he hated musical improv, and then he just took a musical improv workshop. And I was like, that's
perplexing. And then he sang with me on stage.
I know. And that's what I'm saying. I was like, but since then it's like you have said, I'm not going to be in a show. You've said I don't like silliness. You've said I don't like musical improv. I will never do that. I'm not into this. But I've seen you experiment with all of them anyway. And they might not be your preference. You've already said, I'm not really into short form. Cool. It's fine with me to have those opinions as long as you've tried them and like really, and kept yourself open to them. Opinions are opinions. But I love how open you've been in exploring the possibilities that this has to offer, because it truly means that your style is yours because you've explored a ton of options. So it's been really cool from a outside perspective of somebody in your peripheral circle to be able to witness the true evolution of not just the art of Steve, but the personality of Steve as well.
Which is
Shibby.
Twitch is calling it the Steve-evolution, which I think
Yes,
I think is quite fitting.
yes. Thank you,
Yeah.
Ignacio. I appreciate that.
So Crystal, up on stage, you got catharsis. You're safe up there.
Yeah.
Tell me about the skills that improv gives you off stage.
Well, the thing that immediately comes to mind is I'm used to keeping secrets, right? I'm used to not sharing anything. Like everything that matters to me, I keep pretty close to the chest, or I did before I joined improv. So much baggage, but I just didn't want to share myself. I didn't want to, but I'm doing that now, you know, like in my real life, I'm actually talking to people and letting them in, and I'm actually, people will tell you and verify that I'm oversharing. But it's just so that I don't go back into that hole of depression where I'm not telling anybody anything, not asking for help, not doing anything I need to do to keep myself healthy. So it's kind of like I have to find that happy middle, but I'd rather overshare than to, you know, not share enough and then all of a sudden, where's Crystal? Get out of that dump, Crystal.
Yeah. Very often, and even on Twitch right now, people using the word catharsis. I've mentioned it in some of the previous shows. It's not just the performing up on stage that's cathartic. It's the community that we keep referring to. I
love you guys.
Yeah. I think that there's just so much that the community itself, the improv community actually gives us. And I find that so supportive. One thing that I find, and you were mentioning oversharing, Crystal, one thing that I find that's so unique, and maybe one of the reasons why we gravitate towards this community and why we love it so much is because it's expected that we share this stuff. When you're up on stage and you're in class and you're practicing, all of your scene work has to come from someplace, and it comes from right inside. It's coming from your brain, from your heart, and we're expected to share all that stuff. And when you're someone like Steve and like Crystal, you that don't really feel comfortable or didn't feel comfortable sharing that stuff, and you end up with the community, people surround you and say, I want to hear what you have to say. I think that's, it's just a really wonderful feeling. I know that I felt that way.
Yeah, I love that you just said that. I want to hear what you have to say. I think that's one of the things that I love the most about improv, for sure, is that no show that you're in is possible without you, because it's so collaborative, because we all lean on each other and have each other's backs and support each other through our shows. That literally the best show I've ever done, I couldn't have done alone. I couldn't have done it because literally I was 1/6 of the show or 1/8 of the show or 1/2 of the show, depending on, you know, like how many teammates I'm playing with. But I can't put everything on stage and make it perfect. I can't take full credit for anything. And so all of our victories are our victories. All of our defeats or our failures, when we fall on our faces, are ours, and we do that together. And I think that's one of the things that I love the most is I'm never failing alone and I'm never succeeding alone. There's such a we. There's always a we. And everybody's opinion, everybody's voice, everybody's style is heard and can be appreciated through this medium because of the lack of foundational like rules beyond the support. Everybody's voice is super heard, or can be if you allow it. And so when we say to our scene partner, got your back, you know, what I mean is whatever you do up there, I'm there with you. And there's something that's so like fundamentally important about that message. That is why I think improv has become popular. It's not just because it's funny, but the reason people do improv is, you know, sure, it's great to be on stage, but like, holy shit, is it nice to have somebody be there with you.
It is. And by the way, I want to say improv doesn't have to be funny. But no. The collaborative thing, that's another that's just a huge thing, because I wanted to make films for the longest time, but that requires a lot of collaboration. So when I finally started making films, it was a small group. But then when I really learned collaboration was in improv, because like Tina said, you can't do it. I mean, you can do a solo show, but even Jill Bernard has a accompanist, you know, so.
That's so true.
Yeah, so, you know, it's very collaborative. You're all writing, you're all editing, you're all acting, you're all producing, you're all creating all together, all at once, right there. I mean, it's an amazing feeling when things go right. And you know what? They don't always go right, quote unquote right. There's no mistakes in improv, right? So, right. But you know the feeling when you just have that show that is like, wow.
Yeah, you come off stage. I love that feeling when you come off stage. My skin feels electric, and like my adrenaline's through the roof, and I'm like, girl, let's do it again. Like there's so much energy that I have when I come off stage after a good show, and there's just like, it's just amazing to just like high five, like hugs and victory and celebrating it. Like I imagine that's what perhaps sports teams feel like after the big game or whatever, but I feel that way all the time. I can do it anytime.
Like Krista, didn't we feel that way like after the Oklahoma City show? How did we feel?
Oh my gosh, so jazzed. So like, oh my gosh, did you see us on stage? We did that.
And it's great because one of my friends from Chicago was in the audience, was also at that festival. And he was like, there's a team here from San Antonio. They did a great job. And I was like, yes. But it was great that I heard it from somebody else besides you guys, because I think sometimes it can feel, I mean, this is maybe more of a technical and off topic, but sometimes it feels better than it looks. But when it feels good and it looks good, that's perfect improv for me.
For anybody who's watching this and who has not ever experimented with improv, taken a class, if any of this sounds interesting to you, please take an improv class, take one class. Do one performance, and you will experience that sense of community, that collaboration that Steve is talking about, that celebration of success that Tina's talking about, that great jazz feeling that Crystal is talking about. It's an amazing feeling, and I encourage everybody to give it a shot. Tina, you mentioned earlier that you don't fail alone in improv, and Steve, you mentioned that there are no mistakes in improv. What other community can you be part of where if you can make mistakes up on stage, they can be hilarious or awesome or amazing, and afterwards you're all high-fiving because of mistakes that you made? What other community can you say does that?
I've never found one.
Yeah, it's an amazing feeling. Guys, I'm gonna end on that. That's the end of our show.
I am gonna add something else because you know I can never give you the last word, Rick.
Go ahead.
Is from a community angle. You know, I've had Bexar Stage for 3 years now, and we've had hundreds of students come through our training center, which is amazing. And you wouldn't imagine, but I could probably find a metric for the number of students who come into a level 1 class. We tell them, you know, there's a show in 7 weeks. Their eyes get big, their lip starts quivering, whether or not they're a Steve or not. And they're like, what if we don't do the show? Day 1, they'll ask me, what if I don't do the show? And I say, you know what? Totally fine. If I'm never going to make you do a show, but wait 7 weeks to make that choice.
Yeah.
Wait until it's showtime, because by the time they get through a level 1 class, after they've spent 7 weeks with one group of people and they've experienced Got Your Back, have experienced Yes and have built some of that community with their teammates in their class, I have never, not even one time, had a student not participate in the level 1 show because they were scared to, because they couldn't bring themselves to do it or try it. I've had a couple that have been out of town, so maybe missed their level 1 show, but like never have I had a level 1 student who did not make it to their show on purpose, because by the time they spend 7 weeks in that class and get to that show, they want to be there with each other. Even if they're scared, they want to be there together. And I think that's all the testimony you need, honestly, is give it a try, because I promise it's not as scary as you think, because people really do care.
Yeah, you may end up doing a goat show, but that's okay. You know, the goat shows are good. I just want to also express that it's an art form. I would never thought of myself as an artist. You know, I made films but I always liked music, but I never did music. And I did a little photography, but that's not really expressive. This is a way for me to express myself in public and to have it be artistic. I love it for that. It allows me to express myself as an artist and hopefully find an audience. But if there's no audience, then that's fine too.
Steve, thank you so much for joining our panel today and for giving us your insight and your stories. I appreciate it. Crystal, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you so much for sharing some personal parts of your life. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Tina,
you did not hard hit my journalism, baby. Not today, Rick.
I was a little afraid to. I was like, what are the repercussions of diving too deep into Tina's high school years?
Your show gets canceled and I make
yeah, damn it, dude. Folks, thank you guys for joining me today. For all of the Twitch users, I see so much talk on there. Thank you all so much for watching live. Yeah.
Oh, hi,
Roy. Let's see. We have another show coming up on Monday of. No, I'm sorry.
Monday.
Today's Monday. On Wednesday of this week, and then again on a Friday, same time, 6 o'clock. Please join us. What I want to say about the world right now is that things are still really uncertain in the world of small businesses across the country, and that includes improv theaters everywhere. In any state, really, everywhere that they are. What I'd like to say about that is that if you liked what you saw today, if we picked your interest about improv at all, go online, do some research about the improv communities in your area, bookmark them, see if they're doing anything online. If you're able to, go to their websites and hit the donate button. And if you're here in San Antonio, or if you really liked what you saw from this show that's based out of Bexar Stage here in San Antonio, go to bearstage.com. There's a donate button right on the front page. I think that's it, guys. Thank you all again for joining us, and hopefully I'll see you in a couple days.
Yay.
Bye, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, guys.